Hello, my name is John Isbicki. I'm with the U.S. Geological Survey. I've been in charge of the U.S. Geological Survey Hinkley Chromium Background Study. It's always a pleasure to talk to the Hinkley community. It's unfortunate that we have to do it remotely. I hope that you and your families are all healthy and safe. I have 5 slides that I prepared for the group, and the purpose of those slides are to just briefly remind you what the content and purpose of the Hinkley background study was, and to tell you where that study stands in terms of its nearing its completion and where it is in the U.S. Geological Survey review process. As part of this study, we've made literally thousands of measurements of chromium concentrations in rock, soil, drill cuttings from wells, and other materials out in Hinkley and Water Valley. The measurements that you as a community would be most interested in when you look at the report will be the water samples and chromium concentrations in water from wells that we have collected. As part of this study between March 2015 and November 2017, the U.S. Geological Survey collected samples from more than 100 wells distributed throughout Hinkley and Water Valleys. I'd like to thank Pacific Gas and Electric for their cooperation in allowing us to access those wells and for their assistance in sample collection from those wells. I'd also like to thank the technical working group that includes the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, members of the Hinkley community, and Pacific Gas and Electric for their advice and consideration in selecting the wells that we sampled. We could not have done the study without their input and thoughtful work, and I greatly appreciate the effort that they put forward. In addition to the wells that we sampled for complete chemical and isotopic analysis, we sampled an additional 70 domestic wells that were distributed throughout the valleys in areas not monitored by monitoring wells. I'd like to thank the members of the Hinkley community that allowed us to sample their wells so that we could have additional data. Those wells were collected and analyzed on site in the U.S. Geological Survey mobile lab, affording members of the community who chose to do so the opportunity to watch us collect the sample, follow the water sample back to the lab, watch the sample being analyzed, and watch the data be produced and delivered to them on site. So that goes a long way to helping people understand the process that goes into collecting samples, how they're analyzed, and what actually goes on in a lab when they're not present and samples are being analyzed and results are produced at some later date. The wells that we sampled represent a mutually agreed upon spatially distributed set of wells that cover a range of geologic, hydrologic, and geochemical settings within Hinkley and Water Valleys, and they include wells that we sampled within the Chrome 6 plume so that we have an idea of what end members containing high concentrations of anthropogenic chromium might look like. This is and represents the most complete set of independent geologic, geochemical, and isotopic data available within Hinkley and Water Valleys. The report produced from these data consists of 11 chapters. 9 chapters were submitted for review on January 6. The individuals that got review copies included U.S. Geological Survey personnel distributed across the United States and members of the technical working group, including the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, PG&E and their consultants, and members of the Hinkley community. And I would like to thank all of them for the thoughtful and thorough review comments, especially the members of the Hinkley community who really added a lot to this study, and their comments help ensure that the results were understandable by people within the community. The review comments were collectively returned to me on April 1st, and I've been working since April 1st to address those comments, make changes where necessary in the manuscript. There are 2 chapters, Chapter J, which is describing the Task 8 experimental results related to the in situ removal of Chrome 6 from aquifers with downgraded from the compressor station. That is still in preparation. And Chapter G, the conclusions, which also is in preparation. I'm working on that now. Those 2 chapters will go out to colleague review soon, and everybody will have an opportunity to comment on those chapters and the material in those. There are several ancillary reports that are being produced and have been produced as part of the study. They include the study design documents and the midterm report, which you've already seen. These also include data releases describing measurements on aquifer solids and mineralogy of chromium-containing minerals within the Hinkley Valley. And also, you've seen both of those, and also hydrologic data collection within Hinkley Valley. We recently, just this week, had approved a geologic paper by Dave Miller in the Geologic Division, who works closely with us on the superficial geology and borehole stratigraphy within Hinkley Valley. That's not available online yet, but it is approved and will be out shortly. There are also reports that are similar in contact that were funded by other agencies, most notably Mojave Water Agency, dealing with arsenic, chromium, uranium, and vanadium concentrations throughout the Mojave groundwater basin, and sort of give us a regional idea of chromium occurrence in the desert area. This graph shows an outline of the USGS review process. As I said, it started in January 6th, where it was submitted to review after consultation with my supervisors to make sure it was complete enough for review. It went out to USGS colleague review, those two independent reviewers from states across the United States. Also went to the technical working group review, including the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, PG&E, the IRP manager, and technical working group members. So all in all, in addition to specialist reviews within the U.S. Geological Survey, groundwater review specialists, and a water quality specialist, that'd be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 independent sets of review comments that I've received on each chapter. I began the revisions April 1st. I'm now here in July 23rd. Two of the chapters have been completed. The illustrations are done, and they've moved on to supervisory review, which is a process review where my supervisors look at the comments, they look at how I addressed them and made sure that I was thorough and complete in the process. 4 chapters are sitting at the illustrator right now, waiting for her to complete revisions. Additional chapters have all been passed through with all the comments addressed, and we're just waiting to move those forward to the next level. After supervisory review, the chapters will go for further review in the U.S. Water Science Center. What they're looking for at that point is how much of the actual data collected as part of the study we provided, with the goal being that anybody could duplicate the study with the data provided associated with the report. It's a pretty lofty goal, actually, when you think about the number of measurements that we have, but it's an important goal. In this case, if you have the data, if you don't agree with me, you can look at the numbers yourself. You can at least see why I made the decisions I made, what those numbers are representing. And if you think there's something different or incorrect in my interpretation of the data, you'll actually have the opportunity to go through it yourself, if you so chose, to look and see what you believe those numbers should be. The report at that point will continue on through editorial and technical standards review. Because the Hinkley Chrome 6 contamination issue is a very sensitive issue that includes a large amount of funding that will be required to clean up the site and has a long history of public sensitivity, the reports will receive additional review within our headquarters in Washington, D.C., to ensure that they measure up to the appropriate standards, at which point the report will receive USGS or director's approval and be posted online so that all our work will be publicly available to the Hinkley community, to the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, Pacific Gas and Electric, and interested parties anyplace else in the United States or the world. This is a very long report. It has over 150 figures, 11 chapters, a lot of words. But in many ways, for the purposes of people in the Hinkley community, this report boils down to one table of Chrome 6 background concentrations with a value for the eastern, western, northern subareas, and a value for the area within the mapped regulatory plume. So it's one map showing the extent of the plume revised on the basis of our data and 4 numbers. Very simple to understand in that context. And the report really just tells and documents how you got to those 4 numbers. Hopefully those numbers and that map will be understandable by everybody in the Hinkley community. The Chrome 6 background concentrations calculated as part of this study are not background concentrations for regulatory purposes, and the authority to establish those regulatory values resides solely with the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board. So although my work is nearing completion in the Hinkley area, for the community, it's important that you stay engaged, that you follow up with decisions that would be made by regulators responsible for the site so that you can ensure that appropriate decisions are made on your behalf in the future. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your attention, and I appreciate greatly the 5 years that I've spent working in Hinkley Valley. Thank you very much.